Well, with Christmas fast approaching, we have a festive treat for you and a first as well for the Nick Luck Daily Podcast, teaming up with our friends at Coolmore for a review of the 2025 flat season, a season which everyone said was a bit slow to get going, but I think you'll all agree finished with a rare flourish. So I need two rare birds really to appreciate it with me. So I had to come all the way to Cashel, to Mikey Ryan's, to find them. Kevin Blake and Fran Berry. Don't look so serious, gents. This is going to be fun in my company for the next hour. You'll be looking forward to this. Look, Coolmore and Mikey Ryan's have even provided a better class of pastry.
Definitely better than what I'm used to off you anyway, yes.
Okay. All right. Looking forward to this?
Nick, it's December. It's not lovely to be talking about flat racing, isn't it?
We haven't been starved for too long in fairness. I've just come back from Hong Kong. We had the delights of Japan before that, so it never stops, does it?
Never stops, and that's the way it rolls from now on. The international scene is just getting bigger and bigger. Won't be long till you're thinking about Saudi Arabia, what goes on there in the Saudi Cup, all the way through to Maidan in March, and then flat season goes around again.
All right, well, we're going to kick on. Should we just get into it?
Let's
So we're going
go.
to try and do it
Yeah.
all in just under an hour. It's going to be a challenge, but there's so much to look forward to. We're going to start, Kevin, on your suggestion. I better not do that again. On your suggestion with the milers. Let's start with the Guineas this year. What did we enjoy on Guineas weekend? Remind me who they were.
Oh, it was Charlie Appleby, wasn't it? You know, what a weekend he had. You know, fast out of the blocks, the two big classics, Desert Flower, Ruling Court. You know, Ruling Court, poor old Ruling Court, no longer with us, obviously, but God, he looked the right one there, didn't he? And it's a pity that he didn't get to show us, I suppose, the full extent of what he had. Son of Justify, you know, it completed the classic Triple Crown, didn't it, for Justify, which was something. But look, at that stage, you know, the way we all get a little bit carried away. Oh, Charlie Appleby, you know, here he comes. You know, let's see how this plays out. But as we'll develop as this goes on. It didn't quite continue in that vein, but what a start it was.
And it set the narrative for the year, didn't it? With the Guineas, what happened with Field of Gold, going on to the Curragh, change of rider, change of the new retainership with Colin Keane, the way it affected the Irish Jockeys Championship, and what could have been in Newmarket and what subsequently happened afterwards.
That was the story, wasn't it, out of the Guineas, the defeat of Field Gold. He'll stay in training, of course, in 2026, which is great news. How unlucky was he not to win the Guineas? And in the cold light of day, was it Kieran Schumacher's fault?
Yes, I think it was, when you look back at it, particularly that side-on angle, when you look at the race, when the race began to develop, Buick made that move to go forward, and from being right on the tail of the eventual winner, Field of Gold, when Buick made that move into the dip, he just ended up being that length and a half, but momentum wasn't with him. Momentum was with the winner.
You're right, but I don't think it was Schumacher's fault. To me, the horse going down into the dip, he just didn't handle the descent as well as Schumacher wanted them to. And it was in that key juncture, he just lost contact with where he needed to be. You know, so I think it's tough. You know, Schumacher, we know what happened in the Craven, how the horse showed push button acceleration. I'm not going to knock him for expecting the same that day, and he just didn't get it. Quicker ground maybe was a factor, and it just wasn't there. And we know what happened subsequently makes it look worse. But I think on the day, even with the full benefit of hindsight, I don't want to be tough on him.
If he turned up at Newmarket in the same nick that he was at the Curragh, in the Irish Guineas, or in the St James's Palace, then the three of us could have sat on his back together and he'd have won. And that's why I didn't think it was his fault.
It didn't matter then, and great story. Well, I always find it very interesting. Christophe Lemairy went over, tried Natagora, who was a sprinter in the 1,000 Guineas in Newmarket, and he went to Henry Cecil's that morning at a race with Pascal Barry just for something to do, to waste a bit of time. And Henry grabbed Christophe and he said, riding Newmarket is like being on a skateboard. You got to get the momentum down the dip to get up the hill. And I just think that little error, not following William Buick at that point in time, just put him on the back foot, and the rest is history.
Well, we'll debate it until the cows come home. But the result was that Charlie Appleby won both Guineas with Ruling Court and with Desert Flower. There was controversy in France, as there often is. And ask you again. Zaragana was promoted at the expense of She's Perfect. So Charlie Fellows and Basher Watts didn't get their classic victory. And it was the kickoff of an amazing season for the Aga Khan studs. Should she have been thrown out?
Yes, I have no problem with it at all. Particularly when you look at the rear view footage of the race, I think it was a fair call. The problem with stewards' inquiries, and they're a bit more consistent in France, and it's getting a little bit that way in Ireland. When you see what happened to Galway Hurl in the back end of the season, their primary handicap is consistency. You need to know where line is. If you know where line is and people are sticking to it, and that the stewards on one day will do the exact same as done next day, everyone can work around that. It's the inconsistency of decisions, and I think in France it was the right call, and on balance they seem to get it right more often than not over there.
Basha had to practice his French when they went back for the appeal.
Look, it was very tough, but it was right. You know, it was fair. You know, and inevitably, you know, people start thinking about personalities, about, you know, relative size of operations. They think that's a factor. I think they got it right. You know, co-light today, take everything external out of it and judge what happened on the track on that day. I think they got it right.
You know, Aidan O'Brien has got a sure touch now at mastering these French classics as much as he has the Irish classics and the Newmarket classics. Henri Matisse and Camille Pizarro were first and third in the French 2000 Guineas. Camille Pizarro will be at Coolmore next year. There's his late dad, Wootton Bassett. Beautiful picture over your shoulder, Fran. Two kind of interesting horses.
Yeah, very much so. And I think the way that Aidan's targeted French classics in recent times is quite significant as well. And maybe just being that couple of weeks later, beyond Newmarket, can often play to the programme that Aidan sets for them as well. And Henri Matisse, when he won on that occasion, was very, very good. And he's a very nice prospect going forward to the stallion ranks based on that performance. He had a really sharp turn of foot to win a French Guineas.
Yeah, I love the way the race was run, because you know the French Guineas, they can be a bit messy, and they just went some gallop. You know, there was multiple pace pushers. They went absolutely tonto in front, and it set it up for the best horses to show the best turn of foot.
If they were always run like that, you know.
Well, look, and running can be a factor, but Henri Matisse got it. He broke the track record that day, and Camille, you know, caught the eye, you know, with a view to the future. You know, rattling home for third. He didn't get quite as nice a run, but Henri got a beautiful spin through and was able to do what he showed, you know, and the track record in the classic is something, you know.
And they then gave context to horses who we'll talk about a little bit more later, like Delacroix and Field of Gold as the season progressed. We always talk about that Field of Gold performance at Royal Ascot because Colin Keane, obviously, it was a signature moment for him in the official role as retained rider to Juddmonte. You see John Gosden mouthing as he turned for home, too soon, he's gone too soon. Did you think the same thing?
Look, there was an element of it at the Curragh even as well. Look, I think after everything that had happened in Newmarket, like the prolonged fallout, you know, the consequences of it, you know, I think Colin gave him a very safety first ride at the Curragh in particular. And I thought watching it, you're going to need to be, you know, just as far clear of this field as people think you are, because it was quite risk averse and it was made look very simple. And of course, all the smart guys said, well, that's how easy it is, you know, but there's a cost to taking, you know, risk averse decisions, and the horse needed to be really good, and he was, but he was particularly brilliant at Ascot in fairness. Much the same. I think he got an easier ride as the season went on, and I think Ascot and the Curragh suited him better than Newmarket.
Yeah, do you think you know, when you produce a performance of that kind of lung-bursting brilliance and you sort of shown them as Aidan O'Brien was called it, shown them the red zone a little bit, do you think his season was kind of left there a little bit?
Yeah, and physically with him as well. Excuse me.
Big old unit, isn't he?
Big unit, and you could see the run in Ascot in him, even in comparison to the Curragh. You know, it was his third run of the season. He ran the Craven, got beaten English Guineas, won very easy at the Curragh, but then he was going into Royal Ascot where he was totally extended. And on the day at Ascot, he looked just about fine physically and ready to go, but maybe that huge performance that he put in on the day, been asked to question from 2 furlongs out to really open up, just left a mark. And I'd be quite excited to see him next year based on what he did up until Ascot, more so what he did afterwards.
Yeah, but I don't want to knock them for the campaign either, because you'd love to see every real good horse campaign like that, and we'll give more examples of it as we go. But, you know, being a bit swashbuckling with the campaigning, you know, I think is to everyone's benefit. And, you know, like you say, there can be a cost sometimes, but ultimately, like, we're trying to find out what the best horses are to carry on their genes as stallions later, and you want to see them tested, you want to see them examined. You know, we can't be too afraid of being beaten one day, you know?
Now, chaps, Royal Ascot has become increasingly where the superpowers want to be. We know that. For the older horses, it was all about John and Daly Gosden with Ombudsman and Trawlerman and Field of Gold. Aidan completely dominated with all the 2-year-olds. We're pretty unlucky not to get a clean sweep. We're going to talk about all of those in a bit, but Joe Murphy winning with Sassenna. I'm going to let you guys just munch on a mince pie, and I want you to watch Joe Murphy talking a little bit about the magnificent Sassenna taking the Coronation Stakes. Let's enjoy this.
took me a long time to get a runner at Royal Ascot, and then to go along and win it was just numb for about 4 minutes, and then the reality of it, my God, a Group 1 winner at Royal Ascot, sure, it's a lifetime's achievement, and that's what it was. It was just living in heaven.
Followed by Chantilly Lacing Cathedral, it's Aragana and Cesene, a great fight in the Coronation Stakes. Cesene to the inside's going to win it. Cesene has won the Coronation.
Ascot was unbelievable, an unbelievable venue, an unbelievable atmosphere, and the whole razzmatazz of the day was just a dream come true. In fact, I never thought it would happen. Without a doubt, the biggest thrill I've ever experienced. Ascot and the Breeders' Cup, you can't beat it.
I've always loved Australia. You know, when you take Australia, he's had 4 winners in the last, up to this year. That's 5 Royal Ascot winners in 5 years in a row. Now, pound for value, for a sire of his fee, he's remarkable value. And to get a Group 1, it's like an All-Ireland final. It's like getting an All-Ireland medal.
Yeah, we had a great kick out of Royal Ascot this year, you know, like the farm, even the people who'd left us that didn't work for us anymore, who were involved with Churchill and Cecine when she was young, they got a great kick out of it. They were texting me, and like we had 2 Royal Ascot winners that week, but to have a Group 1 winner, which was a homebred off the farm, was something special. We've had a lot of Australians. Yeah, they're good solid horses, good moving horses with good temperaments. Sure, he was a brilliant racehorse with a great pedigree.
My God, I couldn't get over it when I came home. When the poster was on the window in Sadler's, I was nearly afraid to go in, because I said, everybody think I'm going in looking at the poster, and normally I go in for my coffee. And but after that, there was just such goodwill from the country, from people from England, America, France. We've had it from everywhere.
I don't know about you, but I loved that. I thought it was one of the results of the season. Kev, I know how fond you are of Joe Murphy. What did that mean to you? What did it mean for racing?
Look, I think you don't need to know the man. You know, once you familiarise yourself with his story, you know, pretty much 50 years as a trainer, you know, first Group 1 win, first Royal Ascot win. You know, I wish it was as simple as that for everyone, that when you put together a body of work like that and graft over such a period of time, that you get your moment. And that was his moment. And I'm not an emotional fella, but honest to God, after that race, it was catching me. It really was, because if you know him, and you know, in Irish racing, everyone knows Joe and Joe Jr. and Olive. They're just great people, salt to the earth, and it still gets me a little bit, because I just love to see that happen, for someone to get their day. And I was just that was my spoiler alert now, but that was my highlight of the year. I just thought it was incredible. And Joe, the thing about Joe is, you see him at the yearling sales every year. He's grafting. They're picking up horses like this, you know, with plenty of pedigree. Maybe something that needs forgiving. You know, she was a little bit on the handy side. I remember her as a yearling, but he was willing to back his judgment, give the throw that they gave for her, and for it to be one that he selected himself, again, cherry on top.
And a bit of a relaunch, a bit of a 2.0 for Australia's stallion career as well. Well done to Joe Murphy with Cesene. We thought it would just be Field of Goals division in as far as the colt miling division was concerned after Royal Ascot. It wasn't to be. Can you try and explain what happened at Goodwood in the Sussex Stakes in the season of the pacemaker? You rode enough pacemakers, Fran. You'll be able to tell us.
Explain it in less than 20 seconds.
I like to think when I rode a pacemaker, I did my job better, because I didn't win. Kirat, the nature of Goodwood, a unique track, and when you get break on the field like they did going up the hill, and that sharp right-hand turn, they were gone around the corner, and the rest of the field, and then the free wheel down to 2 for the marker, and there was obviously a bit of horse watch between Rosalie and between Field of Gold. It may not have been at its best, but it was just an illustration of what went on for the rest of the year when you take into account this year's gift, what happened with him winning at 100 to 1, 200 to 1.
Exactly, 150 to 1, 200 to 1, 100 whatever. I mean, the miling division just went bonkers until Notable Speech restored a bit of order in the Breeders' Cup Mile, to be fair.
Yeah, and Kirat as well, it just shows you that you can't surrender ground. It's probably Group 2, Group 3 horse at best, but when you give distance like that at a freewheeling track with a foregoing type, no matter how good you are, you can't make up that kind of ground when you surrender.
So what was the best miling performance of the season? Was it that performance of Notable Speech in the Breeders' Cup Mile? Was it Field of Gold at Ascot? Difficult to compare the generations.
It is
isn't
a little bit, you know, and look, the Breeders' Cup, you know, Notable Speech was fantastic. You know, end of season form, I'm always a little bit slow to put the foot to fully believe it. Not fully believe it, but give it the full beans, in terms of rankings. But what he did there was fantastic. I thought, he's a wonderful turn of foot. Always had that. Those tracks play to it.
We never got the intergenerational clash, proper one, did we? That we really wanted.
Can't always have nice things, can we?
No, I know. But next year, who knows? They're all staying in training, so.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We learn more as we go on, but like Field of Gold obviously has the abilities, potential to improve from 3 to 4. But then you get the likes of Alakazi, Glen Eagle's horse coming on, a 3-year-old that was a very good winner of a Group 2 at Leopardstown. Then he was third in the QE2. Maybe didn't have the best of draws in the day, the way it turned out, hadn't come up the middle of the track, but he's only had 7 starts. There's no reason to say as a 4-year-old, being from the Aga Khan's very good families, that he can't improve to get up to Field of Gold's level. So it's all to play for next year. What happened this year is kind of irrelevant when they're kept in training, but it could be a very exciting division.
Yeah, a really crazy helter-skelter miling division, but nowhere near as crazy and bonkers as the sprinters. I mean, this might be the shortest part of this review. Who was in front when the music stopped, Kev?
Well, there was only one that won 2, we'll say, as the season, Asfora. How brilliant was she? I had the madness at Longchamp with the passport being misplaced. And what a story that was.
So, just remind us of that.
They left the passport at a hotel. And the way it works, the system works in France, the passport has to be physically present for the horse to be allowed to run. And they had to give a guy in an Uber a couple of £100 to get the passport there in time. And Paris traffic isn't much fun. And they got there with minutes to spare. And then she went and won. It was incredible. But the whole season was just bananas. But it gave us, some great days in terms of stories. You have Jim Goldie there, and not dissimilar situation to Joe Murphy in some ways. American Affair, Royal Ascot win, Hughesy, Richard Hughes, his first real big one, Group 1, no half measures in the July Cup. Again, another man of huge admiration for, because you see him there grafting at the yearling sales, doing his own legwork, not afraid to buy a left field one, and he wins a Group 1 with a Cable Bay. So that was I got a good kick out of that. Again, 1,000,000 to 1. And it just seemed to be that way the whole way through the season, up until Champions Day, when Richard Fahey pops up again.
The powerful glory. And Richard Fahey thinks this horse could win more Group 1s next year, Fran. You're obviously good mates with Jamie Spencer, who gave it a Spencer special at Ascot. What do you think?
I had dinner with Jamie recently, and he was actually late for it as well, so he got the time right with Powerful Glory, so he did. And look, Richard had a lot of faith in this horse, because you don't bring them down when you're training for high-profile owners to run and make up the numbers to an extent, albeit at the end of the season. So it was quite significant. First of all, he went there, but to pull off the victory that he did just illustrate what went on with the sprinters this year. And I think it's as it's illustrated, it's a very open division. There's no difference really between Group 3 contests or Group 1 contests at this point in time. But I thought Asfura, just what Connections did, they knew the ground was gone for coming to the Flying 5 at the Curragh. They ran her. They took their chance. They went to Longchamp. The rain arrived on a Saturday. She won. I think that's been illustrated, as Kevin said, about getting horse to run more, get beat, come back, learn from it. And that is a perfect example of how small the racing bubble is getting now. And I think it was fantastic.
Did she deserve the Cartier Award on pure merit?
On all levels, yes.
Kev?
You can have the debate, but I love to see a bit of daring rewarded. And they've been particularly daring with that mare. So I'm not going to criticise it.
Was Lazat's victory over Saturno Raven, the Jubilee, the best sprinting performance of the year?
Oh, look, I think it was. And I think when it happened, we're all, I was certainly of the mind, there we go, gelding. Just be like a proper Japanese horse with world-class form, tying in with Kaiying Rising, who we'll mention. He's just going to win everything, isn't he? And then he didn't win again. It was this season. I know he's a bit cracked, but remember he got loose after he won and galloped away on a victory lap. For quite a while afterwards, but he struggled for a little bit of consistency. I know he went close again later in the season, but I think that it clearly was his finest day in every sense.
So on that point, given how common or garden the European sprinters are, and we saw the 8th best sprinter in Australia beating them in 3 Group 1s over the last 2 seasons, we need to turn east and talk about what we've just seen, which is the 16th consecutive victory for Kaiying Rising. But the world handicappers can't have him at any price, it seems.
They're going to have to roll back. They can't treble down, can they? Surely. They got to have to rectify that this time around, don't they?
They just won't put him up.
It's wild. He might be the best sprinter we've seen for decades.
He's the best sprinter I've ever seen in the flesh, for sure. never saw Deja.
Like even before the other day, when you sit down and think about, breaking the 6 furlong track record at Shatin twice, you know the amount of, top class sprints that are staged over that course and distance, the amount of volume of races that are run over that course and distance. Like, that is genuinely remarkable. He's a stunning horse.
What do you think, Fran?
At his ease as well, but he's breaking track records in the manner which he does. Like the last 50, 75 yards on Sunday, Zach Parton is just gearing down. He's
67.7 seconds wrapped up for 100 metres.
It's quite remarkable, and I think a testament also that he could go down to Sydney and do it out of his comfort zone. It read like he didn't have the best preparation when he went there. His trial wasn't maybe to the level of what people had seen, but come race day, class came through in the Everest, and to come back, do what he did in his last 2 runs at Shatin, and look, the dream is whatever Ascot can do to get him to the Royal Meeting next year. That is the dream, because we have a line through his form with Satana Rev, and we know how good he could perform at Royal Ascot.
David Hayes has been reading Kev's column.
But wouldn't it be great? And I know, look, you're asking them to make what is an illogical decision. It's maybe not the best time of year. The prize money doesn't compare very well. There's plenty of risk involved in that level of travel. But it's so exciting. Caviar was an even more logical decision, and look what that did for her. That lifted her from Australian supermare to like one of the most memorable race horses days I can certainly remember in racing. Do things a bit crazy, do things a bit illogical. That's how you create special moments. And he's a rising 6. He's a gelding. You can go and keep beating the same horses, accumulating fortunes, go back to the Everest. But if you want to do something that'll have this horse remembered forever in world racing, Ascot's the place, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. And I think David Hayes' experience of Europe as well. He's a well-travelled man, obviously, that he's had big success in Australia, Hong Kong. There has to be. I'm sure he's been around Ascot as a spectator.
Surely.
It has to be a draw. I want to go there and have a winner. And if they're going to do it, I think racing in general, if Hong Kong give the go-ahead for him to go, would be all the better for it.
and I hear that if he does come over, Maureen Haggis has already guaranteed Zach Burton a full book of outside rides for the remainder of the week.
He'll push them out to the home bend anyway.
That was one of the highlights of the season, wasn't it? Off the track.
Oh, it's brilliant.
that little spat.
I love it. I don't know if she was necessarily correct, but it's great that strong opinions are given, because ultimately we're all too polite, aren't we? We're all a little bit too careful. You'd love to see people shooting from the hip. If that's what you feel, say it. You can. It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
And of course, it was the same week that William nudged Dasheen under the bus as well for rough riding tactics. Another thing that you've been talking about quite a bit.
He was correct there, and it's not an Dasheen thing. It's an
everybody thing,
across the board thing. It's a stewarding issue more so than anything.
Are they rougher than you were? I'm being semi-serious.
I grew up in a real, when you look back at a tough era when you're taking on Mick Cannan, Johnny Murtagh, Pat Spullen, Kevin Manning, that era of Irish riders. So when the Irish riders went to England, we used to find it pretty easy in comparison, because you take on these lads in country tracks in Ireland where there's no camera work really at that time down the back. So it's every man for himself to an extent. The riding now, I think, if you go back on it in England, for me, it was when Pat Cosgrave drifted across the track in the Great Faltershire at York on William Haggis' horse. He was placed in a derby. And
Across the Stars, was it?
Yes, Across the Stars. And he brought Aidan's horse direct all the way across the track and kept the race. And when he was allowed to keep that race, everybody went, I just need to get the line in front.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to get by the line in front. And once more than a neck or a half length in front, I'm fine. I'll deal with the rest of it afterwards. And that's encouraged people just to win at all costs, and that's where the line is drawn.
And that's a key thing you say there, because almost you're incentivized to, if you're going to interfere with someone, interfere with them properly, so that they don't get to within a nose or a neck and give the stewards a tough decision. If you can fully cross them and there are 3 parts of a length coming back at you, you can be comfortable that they're almost certainly not going to change it, and that's dangerous. A dangerous situation to have,
And I'm saying this, somebody got 9 days for knocking Ryan Moore down in Kneam in Royal Ascot. So.
Listen, you've been schooled over jumps as well, to be fair. Do you know he won a Cheltenham Festival race? I wouldn't.
We're not doing a review of that later, no?
No, but we are going to talk about stayers now, appropriately enough. Because who knows, Constitution Hill could be in this division this time next year. What are the chances?
It's got to get installed first.
I can't see it.
Do you want them to run it?
You often get talk of this with like top jumps horses, top hurdlers. Oh, they should give them a go on the flat. And we have seen, Rite of Passage obviously came from bumpers, won a Gold Cup, absolute exception.
Okay.
Not at this hour of his life, I couldn't see it. I'd love to see him win a maiden and have a good day, good positive day out. But would I seriously suggest campaigning him through the summer to try and become a top stayer?
He wants to find a mile and a half maiden on the all-weather for him first.
He does, and his biggest asset, Constitution Hill, is now his worst asset is his jumping, unfortunately. And he's a jump spread horse from the point-to-point field, albeit I've won an Oscar over 7 furlongs, so it can be done. But it's not, as Kevin said, if you get him on the track once, get a win, and then reassess him. I think that is the best we could hope for.
And before we deviate off on this tangent any longer, just had to offer them something, didn't we? Had to offer them something.
Yeah.
If he does end up in this division next year, of course, you have to ask yourself, right, can he beat Trawlerman in a Gold Cup at Ascot, who's going to be 8, but is just thriving?
Yeah, Trawlerman is a special type of horse in the terms of a Gold Cup, because he is just a true stayer of 2.5 miles. And if you're going to face into Trawlerman in a Gold Cup, he's going to grab you by the scruff and he's going to pull you out into the sea and he's going to dunk your head under and you're going to have to be able to swim and fight him off, because that's what he does. He brings horses into deep water, deeper water than most can handle in this day and age. And that's a very difficult thing to face into, I think.
And spent all season giving a little nod to Kyprios, didn't he, as well? Who he battled with so many times. Of course, one of his biggest dangers next year could be Scandinavia. Fran, who's the 3-year-old who, Goodwood Cup, Ledger. He's a tough horse.
Tough horse, Nick, and the further he goes, the better he gets. There's just that proper steering him that he just does what he has to do. Scandinavia, he finds that little bit extra when he needs to. The Goodwood Cup, he was very good getting that weight for age allowance off Illinois, who I thought ran a superb race in the Gold Cup, given he was thrown into deep end Illinois on that occasion with the absence of Kyprios as a 4-year-old, and he just hit the wall at the 2.25 mile mark. So the form looks very strong. He went on to do it extremely well afterwards in the Ledger. So again, as a 3-year-old turning 4, that last, Aidan O'Brien keeps saying it, everybody says it, John Ox, Johnny Murta, that last quarter mile, last 3 furlongs of Gold Cup is a different scenario, but he looks well equipped if he goes that route.
Do you think that's what Bob Baffert's saying to justify over your shoulder? you can produce Group 1 winners from 1 mile to 1 mile and 3/4, my friend. But he did.
Yeah, when he passed the line in the Triple Crown, if you'd said at that moment that what he'd do as a stallion in Europe, I think people would have looked at you a bit funny. But it's remarkable what he's done. And Scandinavia, it's remarkable what he's done for a horse that wasn't sound enough to run in Australia.
Yeah. Yes. Of course. I'll tell you a horse who was sound enough to run in Australia.
I couldn't resist, sorry. I'll never let that one go.
Will Aidan get one to the Melbourne Cup at some point?
Well,
will he bother to try?
I think it's really, and it's not an Aidan thing, it's a European thing in general. I think it's really difficult to get a 3-year-old to get through the hoops.
Well, because their frame is changing.
The way they interpret the scans, I think it's very, very difficult. The nature of a 3-year-old at that stage of their life, I think it's going to be very difficult for anyone to do it. Could he send a 4-year-old down? With the way Aidan trains, the likes of a Scandinavia, as a 4-year-old, he might be rated 120 and he's going to carry top weight.
Your appetite's going to diminish if you get it turned back a couple of, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, look, the thing is, right, the Europeans figured out how to win Melbourne Cups. Cross Counter did it, Rekindling did it. It's with a high-class 3-year-old on the up. As soon as it happened, the Aussies changed the long-standing weight for age scale, gave Northern Hemisphere 3-year-olds an extra kilo, and then the scans came in, which are fundamentally make it particularly difficult for 3-year-olds. Now, I of course would never suggest, Nick, that there's a little bit of what do we call it?
Protectionism.
You said it, Fran. But I think that's been a happy consequence of all that's gone on down there. We all know the bigger picture and why they did what they did, but I think the fact that it's particularly difficult to get a progressive 3-year-old into the starting gates down there.
I'm not having your conspiracy theories, Blake. This is ridiculous. One horse who did make it into the Melbourne Cup, of course, was Al Riffa, and he then ran a terrific race in the Hong Kong Vase, having won the Irish Ledger, having started the season, God knows way back when, in the Saudi, which was it in Saudi?
In the
Red Sea Turf, was it? Or the Neom Turf Cup. I mean, he deserves a sort of, if we were giving out sort of medals of honour, he can have one of those, can't he? For this season?
And he's back for more next year after a very good run in Hong Kong, and I'd love to see him up to 2 miles
Yeah,
at some point
that's
because
easy.
the way he relaxes in it, I know Melbourne Cup notwithstanding, but an open 2 mile company in Europe, I think he'd be very exciting.
He gives himself a great chance because he's fundamentally behind the bridle. And like when you look at what happened with him this year alone, we'll say it's mental to think back that he won a national stakes last the first hands and heels as a big 17 hand 2-year-old. And then of course he's another one by himself.
Yeah.
And he's a great testament to him because
That
he
is a
can.
great picture of Wooden Bassett, isn't it?
It's a
It
beauty.
really is an absolute belter.
But
What a miss.
he's a great advertisement for the sire. I think he's brilliant, and he'll be back again next year. Might start back in the Shima Classic, and then he'll be. I think the Australian bloodstock are cool on the idea of going for another Melbourne Cup. But look, I think every big pot going from a mile and a half up, he'll be doing his best to rock up there.
They've been known to take a view as well, that firm.
Yeah, well, yeah. Less said about this year's renewal, the better.
Okay. You're not getting Mark Zara aboard next year?
It wouldn't be my pick, but it's not my decision.
All right. Those were the stairs. Those were the stairs.
Did
But
you not
you
do the
could.
speed map, no?
Don't worry, we did.
He's 4
Gonna get
wide.
me
He
in
wants
trouble
to come
now.
1 back. He's 3 wide. He wants to come another 1 back. Anyway. He ran in a lot of good middle distance races as well as staying races, so he kind of bisects the divisions. But it's the middle distance horses we're going to focus on now. That was straight into Epsom with a bang, and that's where the Ballydoyle season really set light with wins in the Oaks, which of course is now a race that is going to be alone as the Group 1 on the Friday because the Coronation Cup's going to be moving to the Saturday. The new Coolmore Coronation Cup, of course, there's going to be a massive injection in the Derby prize money. Before we talk about the horses that did so well in 2025, Fran, how much did Epsom need the injection that the track are now trying to give it, and what do they need to do to make this a success?
Based on people who were there last year, this year, if you like, last June, Nick, I think it was a damn squib, the atmosphere-wise. The 9 races really stretched out through the day. So bringing the Coronation Cup onto the same card as it can only benefit that and the injection of prize money. And the Coronation Cup rightfully is a great race in its own right. We've seen a great finish this year. Jan Bruegel, the tactics employed with him to go and beat Calandigan, and it's only going to be to the benefit of the race day. In an ideal world, you'd probably throw the Oaks in on the Saturday and make it the day of days, but that probably won't happen. Financial concerns, obviously, and priorities with 2-day meeting being to the fore, but I think it can only benefit that it's rightfully and should be promoted as the greatest race we have. It stands the test of time, I think, year in, year out. Great occasion, and it deserves to get back into, from 25,000 people this year, we need to get up.
And you sensed, didn't you? I mean, it was such a great result this year for Coolmore across all 3 of the races, and for Ballydoyle. You sensed a real kind of personal investment in the Coronation Cup. I know John Magner and Michael Tabor and Derek Smith kind of wanting to get in behind it and build the festival that it should be.
Yeah, well, look, there's a bigger picture to it, Nick, in terms of, wider trends in European breeding for flat racing. I've looked at this a lot in terms of how the breeders are breeding their mares, the stallions they're using. Like Coolmore are the one operation that no one could ever accuse of not being committed to middle distance racing. But, and it frustrates me a little bit when people say, the other race is dominated by Coolmore, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at the lay of the land in bloodstock terms, where the top middle distance stallions in Europe are, Sea the Stars, Luke de Vega, Frankel, they are spread around. It's just, I think it's a case of Coolmore putting more emphasis on the end goal, working back from there.
But if I was to take an example, a few years ago, small stud in Newmarket with fundamentally a miling family use Nathaniel, high-class middle distance horse, to their mare. They get Desert Crown, who, albeit was fragile, was probably one of the better Derby winners that we've seen in the last decade. So it's not, do you see what I mean? It can be done. It just requires a bit of imagination.
Look, this year's Derby winner was by a stallion that we could have all sent the mare to for 10 grand this year in Australia.
Precisely.
It's not the way it's painted sometimes. And I think that it's as a breeder myself, I think I'm very conscious to try and breed more middle distance. And you hope that someday you might have the dream. We all need dreams. My dream would be I'd love to produce a horse that ends up running in an Epsom Classic. But to do that, you have to input the ingredients to allow it to happen, and we're not doing enough of it. But look, I think there's a selection of stallions, from the lower level up, which isn't always there. Again, to give Coolmore their credit, I think they're standing for stallions at the minute for 20 grand or less this coming year that have all started European middle distance classic winners. You know, Australia, Glen Eagles, Saxon Warrior, and the other one whose name is escaping me.
Well, there's no doubt we'll talk about Glen Eagles a bit more when we come to Calandigan. But Fran, I want to talk about these Epsom heroes first of all. Lambourne, that was his day. It was his day. The ground was right. The setup was right. And that's what he'll forever be remembered for.
Yeah, and the build up to the Epsom as well. The talk all week was Lambourne's coming good. You hear these things on track. It's Lambourne, Wayne Lawrence picked up really good ride in the Derby, and when you see them driven forward out of the gates, you're thinking, will he be able to maintain the pace? But he duly did, and the further he went, the better he got, and he kept extending away in the straight. It was quite a dominant performance on the day. He obviously wasn't quite as good or as effective maybe with the big effort that he produced at Epsom in the Irish equivalent, but he still upheld the form on that occasion.
I can't remember Can you remember who finished second and third, Kev?
Oh yeah, and it was just
Lazy Griff, and who was third?
Tennessee Stud.
Tennessee Stud was second. No one would have got the 1, 2, 3. Or no, sorry, it was the one. It wasn't in the right order.
1, 3, 2. There we go.
The 1, 3, 2. Yeah, yeah.
I'm thinking about getting a tattoo across my knuckles. 1, 3, 2.
Well, were we going to call a horse 1, 3, 2 next year?
Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
All right.
But I think this year's Derby was one that really emphasised the importance of stamina. You know, because it was the 3 strongest stayers in the race. You know, Lazy Griff, his season was cut short, which was a real pity. He looked a very serious candidate for the Ledger, obviously. But both Lambourne and Tennessee Stud, you know, ultimately went up in trip. And it just underlined, you know, I know we love to go to Epsom with a 10 furlong horse that might just get away with it, but stamina really does matter, and that this year was a prime example of it.
Okay, and Wayne Lorden's the other story out of the Derby.
Oh yeah.
So he's pretty much every Ballydoyle jockey has had a Derby, and that was huge for him, particularly after that horrific injury.
Yeah, go back to the Curragh in the Irish Derby, what happened, Wayne. It could have been a career-ending injury. He was off the track for 8 or 9 months to get back. And when you get shoulder injuries and arm injuries, it can be quite difficult to get your rhythm, get everything back flowing as it was. And you can see Wayne, the more riding he got, the better he got. But to ride that winner off the Premier Classic, huge.
And only just missed out in the Oaks as well on Whirl. And Minnie Hawk was the winner. And actually the two of them kept flying the flag, didn't they? Did you imagine that the Oaks would end up working out quite so well?
No, you don't always expect it, because the Oaks can be a little bit low key in terms of, you know, what you look back on at the end of the season. But like, when you look back through the decades, you know, ending up with fillies, 3-year-old fillies at the end of their season that are officially rated 120 plus, like they're rare old teat, and we got 2 of them knocking heads there in the Oaks, you know, and fighting out a wonderful finish, and then driving on afterwards to become, you know, 120 plussers. You know, that really is rarefied air. And look, it's again, I'll come back to Epsom because I have a great fondness for the Epsom Classics as well. But you know, you won't get a better advertisement for an Oaks than that. So, and even the 3rd and 4th were serious fillies as well, you know.
Absolutely. So Whirl went on to win the Pretty Polly and the Nassau.
In the rain.
Exactly. And Minnie Hawk, of course, rounded off with that wonderful run behind Darragh in the Arc. Can you remember the last horse before this year to finish 9th in the Derby, but yet emerge much the best horse from it? I think the answer's Dubai Millennium anyway, but this year it was Delacroix who emerged the best horse out of the Derby when he came and beat Ombudsman in the Eclipse.
Look, I was very, very fond of this horse, and it sort of pained me to I was heavily against him in the Derby because I just felt on his mechanics that it just wouldn't be him. And then ultimately you're right, he's beaten 16 lengths, but you think when a horse runs that poorly around a track like Epsom, you know, you wouldn't be surprised, you know, that afternoon you're thinking, oh God, maybe that's going to be the end of him, you know, as a top class racehorse. But we probably didn't know quite the extent of what we were dealing with, and he just roars back at it, and you know, wins what for me was one of the races of the season in the Eclipse. You know, plenty went wrong for Ombudsman, even more went wrong for Delacroix. Like he was heavily in the fire, you know, and he had to find his way out of it, and the turn of foot was something else. And to me, that's him being able to bounce back like he did from that really, you know, probably tough experience at Epsom, to do that at Sandown a month later. You know, it just underlines him, because he was just tough as nails.
Was that his best performance, or do you think the Irish Champion Stakes was his best performance?
Nah, look, it all comes down to context. For me to come from where he did a furlong down in the Eclipse was just something like that. Overcoming adversity is a big thing, and he did that day. Like, I don't think you'd necessarily rate it his best effort, but for me, in terms of fully contextualized, you know, that was his day. He did something pretty remarkable that day, I feel.
And of course, he's going to be the first of this little group of horses that bashed heads this season. Him and Ombudsman and Calandigan Calandigan's never going to, but he's the first of them to go to stud, and he's going to be very important, isn't he? Particularly with the loss of Wootton Bassett, he's going to be very important. By Dubawi out of Tepe, and a lovely sort of handsome horse who has got sort of that miling pace.
Beautiful horse, and when you see him in the Irish Champion Stakes, he was like a boxer ready to go. He was just so physically strong, and he developed all the way through the year. And like Kevin said, for me, as good as he was in the Irish Champion Stakes, that overhead shot, the turn of foot when Christoph went from the inside to the outside rail to put the race to bed in 50 yards effectively. But Sandown was a bit unique. You don't win races at Sandown, no matter what level you are, to get out, get going late and pick up in a manner which he did. So to see him go to stud, given how good he can be and how good he could have been next season again, he's hugely exciting as Dubawi out Tepin.
Yeah, but what really dragged the ratings of all these horses up was Ombudsman's victory at Royal Ascot, which was so stunningly impressive, admittedly off a pretty crazy, frenetic pace. Kevin, did you think after Ascot this is the real deal, or did you think he was flattered? Now, we know the answer ultimately.
Well, look, it was somewhere in between, because look, he had to do what he did to do it, but it's very rare in a real top flat race that a horse gets an opportunity like that, where there is a completely over the top pace in front of them, and they're wrapped up until as late as he was. You know, and now maybe I'm not damning him with faint praise, but I'd like to think if you'd put Delacroix or Calandigan, any top horse in that very unusual setup, that they would have done something pretty special in terms of figures on the day. But most top flat horses, it wasn't quite a time trial scenario, but I'm sure you know what I mean. Very few horses get a setup like that to absolutely maximise themselves, and it wasn't necessarily through design. I think they would have loved to have got him out in the clear earlier, but it was perfect the way it went. He was brilliant on the day, and look, in fairness to him, he underlined it as the season went. He ran huge at Sandown in defeat. He went to York, funny old race again, but again, it was a funny race for all of them, and he was the one that picked up the pieces and won. And then they all bumped into Calandigan at the end of the year, which we won't knock any of them for.
Can we just have a brief moment for Mike Vince's theatrical announcement of a steward's inquiry after the Juddmonte International, which was to do with the rider of the sixth place horse drawing the wrong weight.
There he is.
Yes. And what happened to that sixth place horse? He went and won the Arc. More of him in a minute. Ombudsman stays in training, which is wonderful.
Brilliant. Brief
word on John and Thady Gosden. Beginning of the season, people were saying, I think the golden era of the Gosdens is over. Oh, no. No, they've come roaring back with good horses.
Yeah, and look, the one thing with them is that when they get one that's good enough, they are fabulous with their real good ones. They don't miss. And while it certainly frustrated me that Ombudsman didn't come to Leopardstown. I thought that was going to be the perfect staging ground for the rematch. We ultimately got to see it, which is the most important thing. But there was probably a benefit to that for them as well,
Where did Aidan land up with Group 1 winners this season? 20... Anyone's welcome to chip in. 25, I reckon. He was a little bit shy of his 28 record, anyway. Gosden had, I think, 6 or 7, something like that. Francis Graffard, 14 Group or Grade 1 winners. It's an all-time record for a French-based trainer, beating one that had stood for 30 years from the master, André Fabre. Japan Cup, Arc, Breeders' Cup, Filly and Mare Turf, French Guineas. Just carry on.
Yeah, but there was such a spread of horses. You can name races, but you spend a while naming horses too.
I think it's 10 individual horses, isn't it, for 14 Group 1?
Unbelievable. And, fair play to him. And you look at the French trainers table, and he hasn't just won it, He's absolutely kicked a bunch of legends clean out of the way. And you have to think it's a new order in France now. This is going to continue, and he's a major factor anywhere in the world now.
So can we talk about his star? I mean, he's had many stars, but his star of stars, and I don't think this is recency bias, Calandigan. We've talked about him in relation to Delacroix and to Ombudsman. He beat the pair of them, of course, in that brilliant edition of the Champion Stakes, Fran. Was that the best race in Europe this year, do you think?
The way it planned out, I suppose you could say it's the end of the season, maybe for Ombudsman and Delacroix.
On terrible ground as well, Fran. Oh, no, wait. We can't blame that this year.
The manner in which he won and the way he got to Gallop Tame at, the way he picked up past the two horses was very, very taken, Nick. And what he did after being beaten at Epsom, he got beaten in Dubai, he got beat in Epsom by Jan Bruegel. and everyone's having a little question about his resolution. And I just thought Jan Bruegel on the day, Ryan Moore did exactly what Yates, the way Yates was ridden when he won the Coronation Cup, and he drew the sting out of Calandigan on that occasion. But I think Francis Graffard, to get him back, get him winning in St. Cloud, really gone back in the habit of winning. And he was, after being beat, facing off some good horses all the way through his previous campaign after winning at Royal Ascot. And from that win on, he just got better and better. And to go on to win the Japan Cup and the back of that win at Ascot was quite taking.
So he obviously stays in training because he's gelded. But Darren's their art winner who beat Mini Hawk. He's also staying in training. So how do you pick your way through the relative campaigns with two fairly similar horses?
They'll manage. We'll know where their preference is, I dare say, with the one that can go on to do the second job. But Calandigan, you can send him anywhere. You know, he's gone to Japan now. You know, there's a great international program there if that's what they want to do. So if they have a spot for the Arc winner, they'll find another spot for Calandigan for sure.
Geldings in the Arc, yes or no?
Yes.
Go on.
Just like I think the way the game is evolving, I know there's traditional. I'm very much traditional as regards distances and program, but when I see Sir Desig and Calandigan and a horse like that missing out, I know they have the advantage that they were gelded for a reason and they're physically and mentally mature because they've been gelded. But I think we need a horse to run and the best take on the best and let them at it.
You're a breeder. Geldings in the Arc?
I would historically have shared Fran's view. I'm wobbling on it a little bit because I kind of went out of my way this year just to speak to as many top trainers as I could and ask them that question. And it was actually Aidan is very strong on it in terms of the advantages, in terms of training a gelding. Because he hasn't been doing it for quite a while, but he feels that it's so much easier. You know, they're easier to train. They're carrying a bit less weight temperamentally. You know, there's a huge amount in it. And look, Charlie Appleby, I suppose, is the poster boy. Every time I walk past him, I have to give him one of these. Just
he's got his shears out ready to
But he shows what you can do if you have high class horses that you're comfortable doing that with. Like, it's incredible what they can do for you around the world. You know.
Did Aidan casually drop in that he might have trained a horse who'd broken a track record in beating Calandigan, who's now at Stud? Did he possibly drop that into the conversation?
Well, it's funny because do you remember when that happened? And City of Troy jumped out, made the running, broke the track record. Calandigan finishes off well, finishes second. Do you remember the narrative after that? And there was, because inevitably you get people that don't really want to climb aboard. And one of the big knocks was, Asher Calandigan, he hasn't even won a Group 1. What did he really beat? And now we know in the fullness of time he beat, the best horse in the world, basically.
It is actually quite an unusual phenomenon because everyone's all over a stallion when they first retire to stud, Emperor's New Clothes and all the rest of it. It's quite unusual that a stallion's kind of appeal is almost greater a year after they've retired than when the hype train was in full steam.
Yeah, it's. I think there's a psychological thing there as well in that the Aidan was so bullish about him, and. I've no question in my mind that Aidan believed it every step of the way. But when someone like Aidan sets the bar that high, the horse has to do incredible things to be seen as living up to it. And sometimes you need to be a year removed to look back. And people will talk about Aidan, the other great horses Aidan has trained. If you track it in the context of the time it was happening, how many has Aidan had that were better 2-year-olds? How many has Aidan had? If you stop the clock at the Juddmonte International and see what all those great horses he's had over the years have done at that point in their life. Like, there's not many ahead of him. There might not be loads at all ahead of him, And then they did what they did. They made the commitment to swinging for the defences in the Breeders' Cup Classic, which was, incredibly punchy. We talked earlier about making illogical decisions. That was one of those. Wow. But they had their go. It didn't work out. But what he did up to that point now, I think, has an even greater shine on it.
So we got some lovely horses going to stud. We've got a lot of good horses remaining in training. I think it's setting us up for a fantastic 2026 flat season. But obviously we've got all the excitement of the 2-year-olds from 2025. We can sort of split them into lots of different categories. But the ones that won the Cartier Awards, Stad and Precise, both trained by Aidan O'Brien for Coolmore, they share something. And this is something you mightn't have predicted at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Star Spangled Banner. That's an incredible. I was looking into this morning. I thought to myself, has this ever happened? Has one sire had both Cartier 2-year-old award winners? I reckon it's happened 3 other times, And the 3 stallions were Justify, with City of Troy and opera singer, Galileo and Dane Hill. You know, it's pretty rarefied air to be operating in. And I know it's a bit silly to be happy for a stallion, but like when you recall that horse's journey, it's quite a while ago now. People might have forgotten. You know, won a Caulfield Guineas. You know, came to Ballydoyle. You know, tip-top sprinter, goes to stud, sub-fertile. Has a couple of years where, like, he came back in training. There was talk about gelding him. He ended up back in Australia, kind of half semi-forgotten about. And then his first crop comes. What did he have? Anton Alexander and the Wow Signal, maybe.
Yeah.
And somehow they worked out this a system with him where they can get him covering mares and getting them in foal at a really good rate. And he's just gone from strength to strength. You know, I've been on board of them for a long time. I've been sending the mares to them for a long, long time. So I'm happier than anyone that it's happening.
You haven't had a Starter Precise yet, have you?
Not yet. Could
Not
happen.
quite. Might happen.
Yeah, I'm going to have 3 2-year-old colts running for the farm next year. So hopefully that might happen. But it was, you know, even his biggest fan, and I'd be up there and say, couldn't have anticipated this. You know, because it's incredible. You know, I think.
And isn't he going to be covering Porta Fortuna? Wasn't that whatever he was saying?
That's what I said immediately post sale. And I think the 2, and I'm open to correction, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. The 2 2-year-olds this year that we're talking about, Precise and Stad, I think they're only numbers 2 and 3 of progeny of Star Spangled Banner that have stepped foot in Ballydoyle. You know,
right?
And they're not going to be the last numbers 2 and 3. I think there's going to be quite a few following them now. But the fact that partnership with Aidan and Star Spangled has had a result like that is something, you know.
It's not a massive surprise that firm have dominated the 2-year-old races this season. We'll talk about some of the later developing horses in a minute, but plenty of other owners have had a look in. And I know how much we've admired Emma Banks for being such a champion of the sport. You know, great music promoter, but also a brilliant promoter of horse racing. And I think everyone enjoyed her contribution, particularly with Spicy Marg. She had a go at the Nunthorpe, but it didn't quite work. But we've got a little film I wanted to show you guys here that's been made by our friends at Coolmore. And this is Spicy Marg doing her stuff.
It's been so much fun with Spicy Marg. From naming her, which was fun, to, you know, going out on that Guineas Day in Newmarket and watching her like just zoom past everybody else. I think we ran in the Cornwallis and came 4th, and had we come 3rd we probably wouldn't have run in the Bosrasham. And then she just won so convincingly. It was just a fantastic way to end the season. I think Star Spangled Banner has done incredibly well over the years. I bred a Star Spangled Banner colt out of my mare, Mrs. Gallagher, who sold really well. I think he has very good-looking children. I mean, there were a few at the sales this year that I couldn't afford. But, you know, he's obviously improved his mares, and his standing has gone up as a stallion in leaps and bounds recently.
Princess Petrol that leads the way and now is quickly away from them. It's Princess Petrol with a full tank here, 3 or 4 lengths clear from his second.
Plan for Princess Petrol is that she has just gone back to Ed Walker's after a break at Fittocks and is looking really well. But we're really excited about her. It's been a weird one, you know. My most expensive purchase and my least expensive purchase, both by Coolmore Sires, last year, are both the best. So I've already bought another St Mark's Basilica. I like them so much I bought another one, but I've got a really lovely St Mark's Basilica who is with Eve Johnson Houghton. She's just gone there, and really excited about her too. You know, I mean, why mess up a good thing? I've had a lot of success first year, so we're going second year, and hopefully lightning can strike twice. The thrill of all of this horse stuff is all of it. I love it. You know, the times, you know, winning the Bosrasham with Spicy Marg was fantastic. You know, I've had a horse that's won a Group 3, a Group 2 and a Group 1. That's rarefied air. What I'd really love to do is, you know, breed a horse that I retain and run, and that does really well. That would probably be the absolute pinnacle. of it.
Well, there's no owner more sporting than Emma Banks. Another progeny of Star Spangled Banner to do well, Spicy Mark, and also her St Mark's Basilica filly Princess Petrel. First season sires, Kevin, some stay up and do well, some burn brightly and then fade away. St Mark's Basilica was a very, very good 3-year-old, so you'd be hopeful.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it was fascinating to watch it pan out, Nick, because Starman and St Mark's were the two that ultimately pulled away from the field. They did it in different styles. You know, Starman started fast, which not everyone expected. You know, he did, wasn't super precocious himself.
I think quite a big
Oh,
horse.
big boy.
Yeah.
And he started quickly and he kept rolling. But I think it's fair to say he got all his flowers. You know, he's been the one that's been heralded all year long, and rightfully so. But I think it's interesting to have a little peek at them comparatively, and just to contextualise what the two of them did. Because look, Starman, to his credit, he did it off a lower nomination fee. He's done it with he's upholding the percentages you can see from a bigger number of runners. But St Mark's, like, he made like quite a slow start. Like, it wasn't until July that he really started going, but he didn't half catch up. And you'll see these percentages here, they're very, very similar. And when you add that context of St Mark's, that he didn't really get going until July, that he was, very much a 3-year-old himself, like, you really would be shocked if they don't drive on like properly as 3-year-olds. And he has a star to represent him in Diamond Necklace.
Well, Kevin, we might be dancing a bit ahead of ourselves here with some of that late season form. But seeing as you've mentioned Diamond Necklace, I wanted to show you Henri Bozo from Arademoso, because he's responsible for much of the early careers of Diamond Necklace and Paddington. And this is what he had to say.
Diamond Necklace is getting up and wins with Soubion to its second position.
She's always shown a lot of class and a lot of personality, and she didn't disappoint us, nor Coolmore, so it's great. While we could see she was a filly that was going to change a lot from a yearling to 2 years old, but she had a lot of class, and we used the stallion because we were all impressed with what he had shown on the track, loved his bloodlines. The family obviously had been successful with Galileo, so it was good, and I'm sure there are still plenty to expect from her.
On adjuge sur MV Magner.
MV Magner.
Diamond Necklace has headed Minerva's. They go close home. Diamond Necklace is the winner comfortably by 2 from Necklace, her stable companion on the outside of Sucania. Up towards the finish, it is Diamond Necklace, hands and heels by Christophe Soubion, remains unbeaten in the Ingabel.
What are those features that you were looking for in St Mark's Basilica? What do you think it is about him that he passes on?
Well, Prudencia is now getting older, so we wanted to use a young stallion, and he was maybe the youngest, the most exciting of the young stallions. Coolmore has always been very supportive to Monceau and to Prudencia, so we're more than happy to do that. No, very much so a mixture of the two, with the qualities, the class, the walk, and the personality.
The finish, Paddington is going from strength to
And
strength.
of course, you also are responsible for raising another Coolmore sire in Paddington. Tell us a little bit about him and what he was like.
Paddington has always been a very strong, powerful colt with a great walk and a lot of self-confidence.
And what have you made of his stock, of the foals that you've seen? Are they similar? Has he stamped them?
We've got 3 out of from him, and 2 colts and a filly, and the 3 of them have that same great, powerful walk. So it's very encouraging.
All right, that was Henri Bozo with a nice encouraging report on young stallion Paddington, but also talking about Diamond Necklace, who's already been a star as a 2-year-old, Kev. Is she likely to be the biggest star amongst the Coolmore 3-year-old fillies, do you think, in 2026?
Look, we know historically things can change so much. Like if we were having this chat this time last year, who would have had Mini Hawk and Whirl up at the top of the list? They can do so much progression from 2 to 3.
Would you have Diamond Necklace above Precise?
Oh God, it's tough. They're different. Like, to me, Precise is going to be a miler, like a real miler. Whereas Diamond Necklace, you just don't. I'd be comfortable that she'll get 10. Might she get 12? I don't know. She'd probably need to do all the right things to get it. But I've just been so impressed with her. Leopardstown, I thought she was deadly. Longchamp, Sumion's confidence spoke volumes. Won very snugly. Really looking forward to seeing what she can do.
I'll put my neck on I'm a Diamond Necklace man.
All day long for me now. Precise, fantastic filly, slow burner, went from Goodwood to what she did in the Fillies Mile, but at the Curragh on debut, Diamond Necklace beat her stable companion that experience. Minerva had to run the race, and it was just pure raw ability when she got out of a gap to get going and win. Quick back up to Leopardstown, much too good for a horse to be placed at Glorious Goodwood as well for Jack Shannon. And then what she did on Arc Day, I thought was spectacular. I thought the way Suman handled her, the way he just brought her into race, but it was all class. And I'd be like Kevin, mile to 10, mile and a half unknown, but she will give herself every chance given how well she relaxes.
My mind wandered a little bit there. I'm just thinking when this video comes out, I'm going to clip up that little bit where Nick Luck says, I'm a Diamond Necklace man, and send it to your lovely wife Laura for repeated use in coming years.
I mean, whether she's a Diamond Necklace girl, I don't know, but that's entirely up to her. We ought to just wheel back, I think, to horses that are lurking menacingly in the shadows. Charles Darwin and Albert Einstein. I mean, what of them and what sort of impact might they yet create?
Oh, Charles Darwin! I was so upset when he got hurt, because I thought after Ascot, I've had a little grow in the back of my mind for a while that I'd love to see a Ballydoyle 2-year-old have a whack at the Nunthorpe, and I thought he was the one. Big, powerful, fast, precocious. I thought he ticked those boxes, and the fact that we got denied, and Aidan had mentioned it after the race as well, it was a frustration for me that we never got the chance to see it. But look, we will hopefully get to see him next year. He's back in training, and I just loved everything he did from what we saw of him. So much speed, power. Can't wait to see him again.
For some of that early season form is still kind of lingering, isn't it?
It is, Nick, and when he beat Cardiff by the Sea, he went on to run very well afterwards at Royal Ascot in her race. It was remarkable, the size of him in the Prairie. Yeah. He just dwarfed everything. There was only, 4 runners from off memory in the race, but his physicality, the strength, the stature to him. So you can only imagine, given the length of time we've seen him since Royal Ascot into next season, if he fills out that frame or develops, it could be really, really exciting to next year. But it's great news that he is back on track, and look forward to seeing him next year.
And you could sort of divide them into horses who were really good early and really good late. But Zavatiri was one of the stories of the season, as was Eve Johnson Horton, really, wasn't she?
Yeah, just a great shot in the arm for everyone too, because this was a horse that was bought for, by a second season sire, I think 35,000 guineas by the High Flyer team and Eve, and tip-top 2-year-old. And rocked up, won the Vintage, won the National Stakes, won the July Stakes. You love to see it, because it gives everyone encouragement that, go and have a go, have a crack. And you might be the one that lands on a horse like that can just do incredible things from where they started from in terms of sale price.
He got lost in the dip in Dewhurst behind Gawan. Is Gawan the sort of horse that we need to be taking a bit more seriously than we are? Like, we know he's going to go straight to the Guineas. We know the trainer's done it before.
Saw him in York, and I thought he was beautiful looking individual. He looked a work in progress then, and he got a very good ride to win the Dewhurst, getting the Stansted Rail, but the scope is there for him to develop as well. And just getting back to Zavatiri and what Kevin was saying about Eve Johnson Howden, and it almost comes back to Sir Senna with Joe Murphy. These people to go work the sales, to go looking for horses, they mightn't get what they want, but they wait, they're patient, and thankfully it gives everyone hope that the results are there if you put into work.
Yeah, and imagine the satisfaction for the Gunthers as well, because they obviously without parole is their horse essentially, and to breed this horse, in a second season, and to do what he did, you can only imagine the sense of satisfaction given the length of the road that they've been on with that particular line.
Yeah, they bred the horse there as well.
Yeah, not a bad
little haul, is it? And you'd be saying, if we transition from 2026 Guineas sort of horses to 2026 Derby horses. Now the Derby betting, as you might expect, is dominated by representatives of Ballydoyle, and people will say, "Oh well, you can't buy these at auction." But you can, if they're Pierre Bonnard, who Timmy Hyde bought as a foal.
And you could have bred Pierre Bonnard as well, theoretically.
Well, let's find out how, shall we? Just take a little look at this.
Powerful Pierre, who's striding clear to the line. Pierre Bonnard gets the Group 1. The Criterium de Saint-Cloud looks very good. Pierre Bonnard too strong.
He was always a good foal, from the day he was born. and we consigned him under Adam Morgan's, who Adam used to work for me. He came up the sales. He was extremely popular foal. He was an extremely good walking foal, big frame, and he had a wonderful temperament. So he was a pretty easy horse to market, you know. He always had a wonderful step. He was a really good walking horse. He had a very laid-back attitude, and in the paddock, you catch your eye every time you went in, you know. Well, he had all the attributes of being a nice horse. He was always a good model. He was always a horse that would catch your eye. So he was a horse you'd say, if he's got an engine, he could be anything, you know. Look, the mare was already a Group 1 winner. She was in foal to Camelot. We'd used Camelot ourselves before, and we think he's a good stallion. So everything was there except for the proper winner on the page. She had one winner, and then she had a few to run, but she needed to produce that good horse.
Camelot takes a narrow lead from the stablemate Astrology, and now starts to draw away the first father-son trainer-jockey combination to win the Derby. Aidan and Joseph O'Brien.
He was an extremely good racehorse. He's an extremely good-looking horse. He puts a lot of quality and movement into his stock. So he's a very proven stallion. He's an easier horse to like, you know. I'd be probably biased, and he's probably one of the best Camelots. You know, he's a precocious horse who looks like the distance ground is no problem to him. And if he stays sound and healthy and goes forward and improves a bit over the winter, he could be anything.
Oh, he's a beaut, Pierre Bonnard. I was all over him after that Newmarket winner. I said, you're getting far too carried away, so I was very pleased to see what he did in France. He's mine for next year, definitely, at the Coles.
Yeah, and when he won it, an all-weather meeting in Dundalk, it just shows you the strength of Irish mains. You never know what you're going to see, but on that occasion he was very, very taken, but he had to go and take the next step up, and he duly did, and he was dominant when he beat a horse that's very effective on soft ground in a boy named Susie, in the manner which he won, and he looks to have all the attributes to train on into next season as well. He relaxes, he's ground versatile to an extent, and he's hugely exciting, being by Camelot going for 2 to 3.
But there's others. There's others in the same stable. Benvenuto Cennini, Hawk Mountain, and plenty more besides. Who'd be your Derby pick at this stage, Kev?
Oh, you know, you do come. I love Pierre Bonnard, but you're always naturally drawn to the Futurity Trophy, and you know, form can get swapped around a bit there. You can make the case for the first 3 there. I do have a bit of a graw for Benvenuto Cellini. You know, he was beaten that day. I don't know if the ground was for him, and I think, to me, he's going to maybe stay the best of the 3, is my own view. And I think that's, you know, as we've discussed earlier, that's such a big asset at Epsom. And I could just see him starting off there in the Ballysacks onto the Cashel Palace Derby trial and land in there with a big chance. A beautiful moving horse, long, fluent, you know, slow strider, just the type of horse I like now when you're starting to think derbies. But I'll just come back briefly, just to put my breeding hat on again, Nick, with Pierre Bonnard. You know, we had 2 really stark examples of that this year. We've talked about accessibility to bloodlines for classics, etc. You look at Pierre Bonnard and you look at Precise and their background story. They're both out of mares that were essentially dispersed and were picked up by breeders that saw something and were willing to take a chance and give them another role. And look what they've bred. You know, 2 of the best 2-year-olds, you know, in Europe. It's heartening, and it didn't cost a load of money either at all. You know, they were both less than 100 grand, these mares, when their breeders bought them. And we saw Morris Burns. There was Whisper View that picked up Way to My Heart, that bred Precise. You know, it can be done. You know, you're fundamentally a dreamer if you're involved in this game, but when you see things like that happen, it does give you encouragement that to keep going and hope that someday it might be you.
All right, well, we're nearly there. So to wrap up, let's have our individual moment of 2025. For you, Fran?
I'm going to steal Kevin Blake's thunder because we're both on same hymn sheet. I think anyone in Irish racing knows the scene. Sir Senna winning the Coronation Stakes. It doesn't get any better than that. Joe Murphy, year in, year out, we take for granted he pitches up there with nice maidens running nace to the Curragh, punches well above his weight, often has to trade horse to keep going, or has connections that need to trade on to buy again. And for him to get a filly that showed promise as a juvenile, come up short, ran a cracker albeit in the Irish Guineas, but to go to Royal Ascot and win the Coronation Stakes in the manner which he did, head it, look book for a second, go and run a cracker. battles back. What a day. What a day.
And you'd know as well as anyone, Fran, because you reminded me, I'd forgotten, you rode a classic second for Joe Murphy, Ard Bray Lady, second to Nighttime, Galileo's first classic winner, subsequent Dama Gaiath. Fran Berry's the piece
He's in
that ties,
everywhere.
that ties
He's the
together
glue
all
that
these
holds it
bits.
all together. Whether it's the Cheltenham Festival, the Japan Cup.
There was a bad second, but it was a second all the same.
Riding pacemakers for Aidan.
I couldn't beat the Galileo. Oh, God. But yeah, that's Joe Murphy. And he gets diamonds, not in the rough, but he goes, works the sales, he buys individuals, not necessarily the strongest pedigrees, but I think it's an illustration too of what the competition is like in Ireland, and you know that when they get the goods, as anyone can, they can maximise it, and he's got her to look forward to next year again, which is brilliant.
Kev?
Well, look, Seseni was great, but I was going to say Lady with the Lamp in the Chelmer, but you've completely tied
Was
me
that
in.
your favourite stakes win of the year or not?
Oh, most certainly.
Yeah? I was going to say the finale at the Curragh, but never mind.
You see, if you know, you know. But look, Seseni, like I say, it's hard to move me off the middle line now, and I was a mess after that. I got such a kick out of it.
Can I throw a couple more that have not been mentioned during the course of this show? Ethical Diamonds winning the Breeders' Cup Turf. How could we forget that?
That was crazy. Yeah, and there was so much to it. You know, because it was obviously Willie doing Willie things, you know, throwing a complete left field decision to go. You know, Dylan said afterwards, I don't know if he said it publicly, but he said to me, you know, Willie basically said, look, just don't embarrass us, just ride us run well, and we'll, you know, hopefully we'll pass a few. And, you know, for Dylan as well, has had an unbelievable season. You know, he was just off the back of, you know, learning he wasn't riding on Riffa in the Melbourne Cup, which, you know, you can have an iron mentality, but something like that's going to give you a knock. So for the timing of that, to coincide with him being crown champion jockey and then have a moment like that on the international stage was just something. But it was very, very memorable.
Special stuff.
Willie, hearing the news that he broke the track record, I think you broke that.
Yep. Yeah. He and it was there for all to see as he mouthed it into the NBC camera. Holy fuck! Genuinely, I don't think I've ever seen him like that.
It was wild.
Well, thank you very, very much, Coolmore, for their support of this Nick Luck Daily end of 2025 podcast. And gents, what surroundings we've had as well. In the lee of the beautifully refurbished Cashel Palace, and here in Mikey Ryan's, not a mince pie has been touched, but they are looking so tempting. Gents, thank you so much. I mean, they say that Christmas specials are a bit passé now, but whether you've had enough of Strictly Come Dancing and whether you've had enough of Mrs. Brown's Boys, you couldn't get enough of these two on this. Thanks so much to Coolmore for their support. Thank you for listening or watching on YouTube. And if you've listened and now fancy watching it all and to actually see what the mince pies look like, make sure you do that. Hopefully we'll be back to do it again next year. But in the meantime, have a very happy Christmas and a very prosperous 2026.